Hello, my name is Gabe, and today I start an endeavor that is to be most, I don't know. You see, my favorite TV show of all time happens to be Futurama. Not my favorite animated show, not my favorite comedy, my favorite show. And there are a lot of reasons for that, and eventually I'll get into them in much more detail. But a recent announcement has made me decide it's an excuse to get to talk about my favorite show. It's coming back, baby. And, well, with Futurama coming back with the entire cast, I want to celebrate by looking back at Futurama's past in what I am considering my extensive look at every single episode of Futurama. Starting, of course, with the first one, Space Pilot 3000. So, these videos will be split into three main sections. The recap. I'm going to recap the episode and get the general gist of the details in there so that, I don't know, I can just summarize the plot. Maybe you want a refresher, maybe you haven't actually watched the show. But the recap will mainly exist to contextualize what I'll talk about in the other two segments. Next up, the review. I'll talk about what I think are the high points and low points of the episode and try and give a decent opinion. I guess keep in mind I'll be talking about the episodes with spoilers since I am recapping it. That's to be assumed. And third, and finally, the Comedy Awards. I am going to try and decide who is, in my opinion, the funniest character in the show by awarding the funniest moment in the show to whichever character it belongs to, and from there, well, we'll see what happens. So Space Pilot 3000 begins with Fry, a loser of a delivery boy who has basically nothing going on for him in the year 1999, delivering pizza to Icy Wiener, basically to a cryogenic lab where he, realizing it's a crank call, just sits down and ends up falling into a cryogenic tube. And he sits there for 1,000 years. He wakes up 1,000 years later and is actually really excited to be in the future and have a new chance to not be a loser, deciding that he's not going to be a delivery boy anymore. Then a Cyclops named Leela shows up and basically implants him with a career chip that would label him as a delivery boy forever. Of course, not wanting to do that, Fry runs away. Mistaking a suicide booth for a phone booth, Fry attempts to use one where he meets the robot Bender, whom I'm sure we will all remember and love later down the line. So, after meeting Bender and eventually getting out of the booth, he and Bender have a drink and sort of start to get along and become friends. Then Leela shows back up and chases them to the Head Museum. It's a museum full of animated heads, where Fry and Bender eventually find themselves against a wall, and after slightly reprogramming Bender by accident, they manage to use Bender's strength to escape, where they end up in the sewers, where, after having a change of heart, Leela meets them, and they decide to go to Fry's only living relative, his great grandnephew. Or wait, was it just nephew? I may have got the quote wrong, in which case I messed up, my bad. Hubert Farnsworth, who offers them a job, and Fry is then hired as a delivery boy. Time for the review. Honestly, Like any show, it definitely takes Futurama a good few episodes to really get into its stride. That isn't to say that I think this episode's bad. Far from it. I just think a lot of other episodes are better. Characters don't feel as well defined as they later will, and it shows. I really don't get a sense on who anyone is, basically, except for Fry in this episode. I know who they are because I've seen the entire show like 1,000 times. But honestly, Fry is the only character I really seem to I really feel like I have a grasp on at this point. That isn't to say everyone else is bad. Like I said, the show just lacks a lot of the polish that later episodes, and even especially seasons, would add on to it. And, well, it definitely shows. But I want to make it clear, though, yeah, that the episode still hit home a lot of the core ideas. Especially what the show was going to be at the time. But like with anything, the show did naturally evolve. And you're definitely going to see me getting super excited into a lot of the episodes we're talking about. But this one is just the start. I think it's a fair start, and but it's fun to see how things start. Now, it's time for the Comedy Awards. Dun 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 dun. So, let me once again run a quick rundown on how this is going to work every episode. I am not looking for who was the funniest in every episode. Because in all honesty, if I did that, Bender would win without a doubt. So, to give everyone else at least a margin, slight chance, I am looking for the funniest moment. And from the funniest moment, prizes will be awarded. And I will state, Bender did have an extremely strong showing even in this episode. With scenes like this.
You any good at it?
You kidding? I was a star. I could bend a girder to any angle. 30 degrees, 32 degrees, you name it. 31.
And this.
I'm unstoppable! Ah.
I don't know how you did that.
Honestly, I liked them. Leela and the police had a moment I liked.
This is Officer 1BDI, requesting backup.
We'll be there in 5 minutes.
Even if it was kind of simple. But the funniest scene in the entire episode is this one.
Let me show you around. That's my lab table, and this is my work stool. And over there is my intergalactic spaceship. And here's where I keep assorted lengths of wire.
At least in my opinion. Look, the way he just sort of nonchalantly brings up the spaceship as if it's not a big deal, which maybe it is, maybe it isn't, it just kind of tickled me a little bit. And, well, I'm excited to see where... Nope. And, well, I kind of appreciated that scene more than I even thought I would, remembering it. So, Hubert Farnsworth, congratulations. You've won the first award. Well, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you will continue to join me for future episodes of this series. Because there's going to be a lot of them. There are a lot of episodes of Futurama. And apparently there's going to be more. If you liked it, I hope you give it a like. And if you do want to see more of these, and some of the other stuff I do, like some gameplay stuff and book reviews, why not subscribe? But more importantly than any of that, have a good night. Huh? What? What are you guys still doing here? We just... we faded to, we did the whole have a good night, we faded to black, and oh, spoiler corner, right. I guess I do promise that. So welcome to the secret segment, the spoiler corner. Admittedly, how to explain? Basically, I'm not satisfied just talking about the show from the perspective of each episode on its own basis. I could, and I would be a valuable video in of itself, I'm sure, but it's my favorite series ever, and I personally think every episode deserves way more consideration than that. So, this segment is about an element in the episode and how it relates to the series going forward. Note, that isn't to say that I'm going to be talking about every detail of this episode that reflects in the future of the series. Nah, it's more focused than that. And for this episode, I want to talk about one particular important in this episode, but never again's element. The career chips. So, the career chips are an interesting idea that ultimately Futurama basically immediately threw away. They're like never brought up again after this episode, save for a few exceptions. And even then, in those sections, it's not like they made a big deal of. So, first, I want to talk about the why. Why were career chips neglected the way they were? Well, I think because it limited the show. And I think the writers realized that very quickly. They are creating this amazing future world in Futurama, with a society and so many different angles. If our characters are forced to have one job the entire series, unless very specific things happen, then we're limiting what of that world we are actually allowed to see. And, obviously, they wanted to have episodes where Fry's a policeman, or Leela's a writer, or whatever other jobs they decide people should have for a little while. However, because, for the most part, Futurama does care about continuity, it's hard not to notice that they've gone away. So, I want to talk about a few of the in-universe reasons I have heard to explain this. Before I do, though, I want to keep one thing clear. The reason is as clear as day. The writers didn't like it. No grand plan attached. They didn't like it, so they just kind of ignored it, hoping people would forget about it. But it's fun to speculate a little and theorize, so let's have fun with it. The career chips were never actually enforced. It's this idea that basically they only exist to ensure that that everyone is employed, and that if you can get a job without them, it's fine. My only problem with that is it contradicts this very pilot episode. It, basically, in this episode, the career chips are a pivotal part of the conflict, and not just for Fry. And if you were allowed to get a job without having the proper career chips, and they're just meant to help you, then this line would never even need be uttered.
Thanks for the offer, Professor, but we don't have the proper career chips.
So no, I do think at this point in the series they're supposed to be enforced. I'm gonna say supposed to. Theory 2. Career chips are really just for people who've been cryogenically unfrozen. Again, contradicts something in this episode. Number 3, and this is the one I tend to like the most. When Nixon's head was elected president, he abolished the career chips. This is a fair one, honestly. Though, there's still a few little problems. Namely, career chips, although they rarely came up, do come up even after he's been elected. That being said, one could argue it's a law he abolished later. Another thing I heard browsing the internet was that a lot of the other jobs they have are just hobbies, but again, Fry ended up becoming a police officer, and that's not really a hobby. So, honestly, out of all the theories, the one I gravitate towards more is the Richard Nixon's head one. Though ultimately, it is fascinating to look at the elements in this show that they ended up bringing back, and the elements they ended up rejecting. And, obviously, throughout these spoiler corners, we're going to do that. Anyways, for realsies this time, bye.